Please, have a seat. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
Go ahead and do introductions if you're prepared.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon. My name is James Orr. I'm joined today by Ethan Marks.
Good afternoon.
Together, we represent the United States.
Appearances from the defense, Your Honor.
Yes, please.
Good afternoon. My name's Travis Harper, joined here today by my colleague, Ms. Stella Asmara.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
Together, we represent the defendant in today's case, Mr. Augie Shepard.
Are there any preliminary matters before we get rolling?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
We'd like to invoke Rule 615, constructively sequestering all witnesses in this trial.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor. Mr. Shepard will be constructively here for his trial.
Lastly, Your Honor, we'd just like to draw your attention to one of the stipulations in this case. Do you happen to have a binder up there with you?
Yes.
Specifically, this is stipulation 8. It should be on the 3rd page up there.
Yes, I'm familiar with that. Go ahead.
Yes. The stipulation just states that a couple of exhibits that are witness statements or expert reports are admissible without objection. We just wanted to draw your attention to that, given we'll be using some of them during trial.
Very well.
That's all from the state. We're ready to move into opening statements.
Okay.
Just one brief housekeeping matter.
Go ahead, sir.
Just ask your preferences in regards to approaching opposing counsel, the witness, and the bench.
I assume this is the witness
Yes, Your
stand to my left here. The only restriction I would give you is if you are approaching an adverse witness, in other words, you're on cross-examination, ask for the court's permission. But your own witness and closing, opening, the courtroom is yours.
Yes, Your Honor. With that, we're ready to go to opening statements.
Okay? Prosecution open, please.
Thank you. The call, the car, and the cables. Members of the jury, this is a murder trial. The victim is a man named Barry Capello. He was a member of a crime family. Today you'll learn that Mr. Capello betrayed that family 4 years ago when he testified against them in open court. After the trial, Mr. Capello was put in witness protection and brought to Los Angeles. But today you'll learn that that didn't keep Mr. Capello safe. You'll learn that on June 25th of last year, the defendant, a member of that same crime family, spotted Mr. Capello. And hours later, he was strangled. And today we'll prove that the person who killed Mr. Capello was the defendant, Augie Shepard. You'll learn the reason the defendant committed this crime was simple: revenge. You're going to hear today that the defendant was furious when he found out that Mr. Capello had testified against the family. But he didn't know where Mr. Capello was until June of last year, when the defendant was on a vacation to Los Angeles. He saw Mr. Capello outside a restaurant, and in that moment, the defendant decided to get revenge. You'll learn that the defendant went to Mr. Capello's house that night, snuck up behind him, and strangled him with jumper cables. We're also going to show you the reason the defendant got caught. We'll play you a call from the victim just hours before he was killed by the defendant. You'll see the car the defendant used to get to the crime scene, and you'll even see the murder weapon, that pair of jumper cables that the defendant used to strangle Mr. Capello. Now, as the state, we can't just tell you that all of that is what happened. We have to prove it. We've charged the defendant with 2 crimes: murder and retaliation against a witness. That means we have to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant intentionally killed Mr. Capello, and that he did so because of something Mr. Capello said in court. That's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to do that by focusing on the reasons that this defendant got caught. The call, the car, and the cables. And we'll start with the call. Today we're going to play you a call that Mr. Capello made to the person who helped him get into witness protection from the same day that Mr. Capello died. You'll learn that that day, Mr. Capello saw the defendant. And more importantly, that the defendant saw Mr. Capello. We'll hear Mr. Capello say himself. He knew at that moment the family found him. Which will bring us to that second thing, the car. You see, today you're going to learn that when the defendant got to LA, he rented a very specific vehicle, a dark green Ferrari. But you're also going to learn that an eyewitness who saw this crime occur saw the killer escape from Mr. Capello's driveway in a dark green sports car. Which will bring us to that third and final thing, the cables. Today you're going to hear from the person who investigated this crime. That person is going to tell you that he found jumper cables next to Mr. Capello's body. That the autopsy showed that those cables were used to kill Mr. Capello. And when he looked at Mr. Shepard's car, the jumper cables were missing. Members of the jury, no one is going to ask you to believe that Mr. Capello was a perfect person. He wasn't. He was a part of the same crime family the defendant was. But he didn't deserve to die. And today we're going to prove to you that the defendant killed Mr. Capello. We'll show you that with the call, the car, and the cables. That's why at the conclusion of this trial, we're going to ask that you find the defendant guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Orr. Mr. Harper?
Yes, Your Honor.
Excuse me.
May I proceed?
Please.
May it please the court. Mr. Orr. Members of the jury. People see what they expect to see. It's June 26th of 2021. And a federal marshal is walking up the driveway of Barry Capello. A quiet suburban neighborhood in Westwood is now swarmed with police officers. He looks down. He sees the one thing that he hoped to have never to see. The witness he had relocated was dead on the ground. He thinks to himself, how could this have happened? I relocated him. I protected him. He was my responsibility. This is my fault. I need to find someone to blame. It must have been the mom. In that moment, that agent saw exactly what he wanted to see. Didn't matter if the evidence didn't line up with his story. But when these prosecutors come into court and they file criminal charges, and Mr. Orr is exactly correct, they can't just tell you that their story is true. They have to prove it. Because they took on a burden. A burden to prove. A burden to prove their case beyond all reasonable doubt. That means it's their job. And their job alone to prove to you every single element of those two charges, not until it's possible, or probable, or likely, or more than likely. They need to convince you that Mr. Shepard is guilty beyond all reasonable doubt. It's the heaviest burden in our legal system, members of the jury, and you're going to learn it's certainly not one these prosecutors are going to meet today. As it's simple. People see what they expect to see. These prosecutors saw what they wanted to see as well. Now, how do we know that? Over the course of today's trial, I'm going to ask you to pay attention to 3 simple facts. So I want to walk through those one by one. First, there's no forensic evidence that ties Mr. Shepard back to that crime scene. You know, in criminal cases like these, you're probably used to seeing DNA evidence, maybe fingerprints, maybe security cam footage. But the lead investigator on this case is going to take that stand and tell you that he didn't find any of those things connecting Mr. Shepard to this crime. So you're going to ask, what about the witnesses? That brings me to fact number 2. There's no reliable eyewitness in this case. Today you're going to hear testimony from one of Mr. Capello's neighbors. And Mr. Orr is going to try to convince you that that person's an eyewitness, but I want you to listen closely to what they actually saw. Because if you do, you'll learn that that person, they admit it was dark. They didn't see Mr. Shepard's face. They couldn't say his skin color, couldn't say his hair color. He couldn't even identify him in a photo. Why? Because today, members of the jury, are going to learn fact number 3. The prosecution's most basic theory of this case, it doesn't make sense because this wasn't a mob hit. You're going to have the opportunity to hear from an expert in organized crime that's been investigating this crime family for years. You're going to learn that this was actually pretty atypical for a usual mob hit. But not just that. We're actually going to call Mr. Shepard's daughter. Her name's Lauren Shepard. She's going to tell you that her father is not a mob boss, and he certainly didn't kill Barry Capello. She's going to tell you that they went to LA for a college visit. They were excited to have father-daughter time. But that weekend was the last time she was able to spend time with her father for over 2 years. All because these prosecutors saw what they wanted to see. That's why at the end of this trial, I'm going to come before you again. I'm going to ask you to pay attention to those 3 simple facts. And members of the jury, if there's one thing you're going to know 100%, it's that people see what they want to see. That's why we're going to ask you to find Mr. Shepard not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Okay, hang on just a minute, please. Any juror need more time? Okay. First witness, counsel?
Yes, Your Honor. Before we call our first witness, we'd just like to enter a couple of those exhibits we talked about before. Specifically, that's exhibits 3, 4, and 6. It's just an affidavit, a forensics report, and an autopsy.
Any objection, Mr. Harper?
No objections, Your Honor.
It'll be admitted.
Yes, Your Honor. With that, the state calls Connor Wright. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody.
Could you please state your name for the record?
Sure, my name is Connor Wright.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a U.S. Marshal.
How'd you get to doing that?
So, when I was a kid, all I wanted to be was an FBI field agent, but it turns out they make you pass a physical test at Quantico, and I couldn't do all the push-ups. So I became a deputy investigator with the U.S. Marshal Service.
Mr. Wright, could you tell us how you were involved in this case?
I can. I was assigned to be the lead investigator for the death of Barry Capello.
Sir, I want to walk the jury now through some of the people involved in this case. You mentioned the name Barry Capello. Have you met him?
Yes, sir, I have. I was in charge of Mr. Capello's relocation to Los Angeles.
Why was Mr. Capello being relocated?
Mr. Capello was being relocated due to his involvement in the prosecution of a member of the DeBruno crime family. He gave testimony that was damaging to the crime family and was immediately moved for his own protection.
How long did you interact with Mr. Capello before his death?
We knew each other for years. We moved him in 2018 after his testimony, and he was killed in 2021, so it was a 3-year relationship.
Were you responsible for investigating Mr. Capello's death?
Yes, sir.
Could you tell the jury about the major pieces of evidence you found during that investigation?
Yes, I can. The 3 notable pieces of evidence that I found were a call that was placed by Mr. Capello to me the day before he died, a car that was seen outside his house on the night of the murder, and a pair of jumper cables that we found in his driveway next to his body.
So then, sir, I want to walk through those 3 things one at a time.
Sure.
First, starting with that call. Could you tell us when you got that voicemail?
I can. I received a voicemail on my office phone around midday on June 25th, 2021. I didn't actually get able to listen to it till the next day because it wasn't on my cell.
Would you recognize that voicemail from Mr. Capello who played it for you?
I assume so, yes.
Your Honor, at this point we offer Exhibits 13 and 14 into evidence. Pursuant to stipulation, both parties have agreed that these are an accurate voicemail and transcript of that voicemail from Mr. Capello at 12:50 on that day.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. An objection to hearsay? Or not to the authentication of the document, but to the admission of the document. Excuse me, of the transcript, of the voicemail, excuse me.
May I respond?
Yes.
Your Honor, this meets 2 different exceptions to hearsay. First, this is a statement offered against a party who wrongfully caused the declarant's unavailability. This is a case about murder and retaliation against a witness. We're offering this evidence as evidence of the fact that there was retaliation, that there was this relationship ongoing, and it's our entire case today that he was killed because of testimony he was going to offer and that he had offered. So first, it meets that exception to hearsay under Rule 804. Additionally, this statement's within it, if you could go to Exhibit 14, that's the transcript of the voicemail. The statements within this voicemail: Augie Shepard just walked by my office window and we made eye contact. That meets an exception to hearsay under 803.1. That's a present sense impression. It describes something that just occurred.
Response, Your Honor?
Can you hang on just a moment? Let me
Of course,
just
Your Honor.
quickly refresh my memory on 804 and 801. 3, did you say?
It's 803.1 is
Okay.
present sense.
Present sense impression, okay. What part of 804 are you referring to, counsel?
I believe this is 804B6. This is a statement offered against a party that wrongfully caused the declarant's unavailability.
Got it, thank you. All right, Mr. Harper, go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. First, there's not enough foundation on the record for either of those exceptions. Addressing the exception under 804B6, that's not for a circumstance like this. That's when if you know you're on trial for murder and you go kill someone because they know they're going to testify against you. They have to be a testifying witness in the current trial, or plan to be a testifying witness. And we've heard no foundation on the record that, 1, he was ever going to testify in a trial against Mr. Shepard, and 2, that Mr. Shepard even killed him. They need to lay that foundation on the record in the first place. And that's to that present sense impression. It's very specific, Your Honor. It talks about a very specific timeline. It has to be immediately or while they're experiencing the event. We've heard no foundation about when this call was made, when he saw him, what time he saw him, what time the voicemail was left. We need to hear that foundation on the record in order to know whether or not it was made within or immediately after he was perceiving the event. We need to hear that foundation on the record for either of these exceptions to apply.
May I respond to that?
Just hang on, well, actually, go ahead.
First, with the unavailability and the declarant being wrongfully caused to be unavailable. That doesn't just apply in cases where they're about to be testifying. It applies in any case where the defendant or the declarant wrongfully caused their unavailability. We're talking about a case that's murder and retaliation against a witness. Clearly, we're talking about wrongfully causing unavailability. Additionally, the court is allowed to conditionally admit statements like this, such that at the end of the trial we can reevaluate if sufficient evidence by preponderance of the evidence exists to show that there was that wrongful causing of unavailability. Additionally, with 803.1, that present sense impression, it's not just immediately during, but it's also immediately after. The foundation is already on the record from this witness that the voicemail was placed at 12:50 p.m. on June 25th, just hours before he was killed. Additionally, the statement says, Augie Shepard just walked by my office. Your Honor, that's a present sense impression.
A response, Your Honor?
Mr. Harper, if you have any rebuttal to the present sense impression, please address that, but don't address the other issue.
Of course, Your Honor. If I may proffer,
Sure.
this witness actually knows that Mr. Capello actually called his wife first before he actually called this witness. And it has to be immediately or during. Frankly, Your Honor, we don't even know when he saw him, much less whether or not he was perceiving it while on the phone with him. We need to hear that foundation on the record, especially if there's evidence that shows to the contrary, that there was actually a substantial amount of time between seeing him and then making that call.
I'm not persuaded by the 804 argument, but under 803.1, I'm going to overrule the objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Marks, could you please play Exhibit 13, that voicemail for the jury?
Call me when you get this. I think they found me. Augie Shepard just walked by my office window. We made eye contact.
Mr. Wright, do you recognize the voice in that call?
I do. That was Mr. Capello.
Do you recognize the name that was included in that call? Augie Shepard?
I do.
How do you know Mr. Shepard?
Mr. Shepard is the defendant in this case. He's believed to be by authorities to be the crime boss of the DeBruno crime family.
Sir, I want to talk now about that second part of your investigation, that car that you mentioned before.
All right?
Did you find any evidence that the defendant rented a car while he was in California?
I did. We checked some rental car places. It turned out the defendant had rented a car while in LA for the day.
What car did the defendant rent?
It was a very specific type of car. It was a dark green Ferrari sports car.
Sir, could you please turn to Exhibit 19 in that binder in front of you?
Sure, just give me 1 sec to get there. All right, I'm there.
Do you recognize that?
I do. This is the dark green Ferrari sports car that the defendant rented in LA.
We offer Exhibit 19.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
It'll be admitted.
Sir, did you ever speak to any witnesses about this vehicle?
I did.
Who did you speak with?
We interviewed a neighbor of Barry Capello's who actually saw this murder take place from his window, and he reported seeing a car just like this one outside Barry Capello's house. That was the car that the person who killed him got into.
Objection, Your Honor, lack of foundation, if I may be heard.
Sure.
Specifically objecting to the witness's statement that it was a car just like this one. Your Honor, we actually dispute whether or not it was just like the car in that photo, and there are actually details that were different than what that witness said. This witness needs to testify to specifically what that eyewitness testified to, and then we can say whether or not it matches the description of the car. There's a lack of foundation for that testimony.
May I respond?
Yes.
Your Honor, Exhibit 3, the affidavit of this witness we're talking about, is already in evidence. Both parties have already waived any objections to the statements within that document. All of this about whether it does or doesn't say that or exactly how to interpret it, that's a matter of weight, not admissibility, and Mr. Harper is welcome to cross-examine on that.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes. Just in rebuttal to that.
Yes, Your Honor. I'm not objecting to any statements contained within this exhibit. I'm objecting to this witness's characterization of that car being just like the one that was used that night. That text is nowhere in this exhibit.
Okay, I think that's a very appropriate area for cross-examination.
Yes, Your
But
Honor.
at this point, I'm going to overrule the objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Wright, you were just telling us about what that witness said about this vehicle.
Yeah, I showed this picture to the witness, and he said it looked like the car he saw that night.
So did you ever investigate the defendant's vehicle?
I did. I checked with the rental car company, and they sent some records to me.
So I want to talk now about something that may have been missing from that vehicle. those cables. Sir, the cables you mentioned, where did you find those?
I found jumper cables right next to Barry Capello's body in his driveway.
Would you recognize those cables if I showed them to you?
Of course.
I'm showing the witness what's been marked for identification as Exhibit 25. Sir, do you recognize what I'm showing you here?
Yeah, those look to be the jumper cables that I recovered next to Capello's body.
We offer Exhibit 25.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
It'll be admitted.
Sir, you mentioned that you found these cables next to Mr. Capello's body. Did you find any forensic evidence relating to these cables and Mr. Capello's death?
We did, sir. We were able to find that Mr. Capello's DNA was on those cables.
Did you find anything on Mr. Capello's body that suggested he'd been strangled?
We did. There were bruises, strangulation marks around his neck, and I believe that the coroner concluded that he was strangled.
Sir, could you turn to Exhibit 6 in that binder in front of you?
Sure, just give me 1 second to get there. All right, I'm there.
Could you tell the jury what this document is?
This is the autopsy report of Mr. Capello from the LA County Medical Examiner.
What was the cause of death that the coroner reported?
Asphyxia caused by strangulation.
Is there a murder weapon listed?
There is. Down here in the opinion section, the coroner writes, jumper cables found near body consistent with injuries and cause of death.
Sir, did you ever find out what brand of jumper cables were next to Mr. Capello's body?
I did. It was a common brand called Nylite. They make jumper cables, sell them at like Walmart, Target, stores like that.
Now, you told us before you looked into the rental company and what they had inside of Mr. Shepard's vehicle. Did you find any evidence about the brand of jumper cables included there?
I did. That rental place puts Nylite jumper cables in all of their cars' trunks.
So then how did you conclude your investigation into this case?
Well, sir, after we found that those cables were not in the trunk of Mr. Shepard's rental car, based on the call I received, the car that was seen that night, and the fact that those cables weren't there, we arrested Augie Shepard for the murder of Barry Capello.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Nothing further.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Before proceeding with cross, we'd just like to offer Exhibit 5, one of those exhibits that's been stipulated to be admissible without any objection.
That's fine pursuant to that same stipulation.
Very well. It'll be admitted.
Is it possible for the jury to see the photograph of the vehicle that you held up?
Of course. Just the next copy here.
And that's the same photograph, it has the same photograph, right?
Yes.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Marshal.
Good afternoon. How are you, sir?
I'm great. What about yourself?
I'm doing well.
Just want to ask you a few questions about your investigation. Because, sir, you're not an organized crime expert, are you?
No, sir. I'm a U.S. Marshal.
You are a U.S. Marshal. You work with relocating witnesses, right?
I relocate witnesses primarily. I also investigate if something goes wrong.
And you actually read the report of an expert in organized crime, true?
I did, yes. Agent Falkenstein with the FBI.
I want to talk about what Agent Falkenstein did and didn't say. Because it's true, she says that mob hits, they're usually conducted with a gun or a knife, right?
That's true. In the last few decades in this country, mob hits have typically been conducted with guns or knives.
She certainly didn't say mob hits are usually conducted with jumper cables, did she?
No.
In this case, the hit was done by a jumper cable, right?
That's what we believe. Yes, sir.
Well, Agent Falkenstein, she also says that in mob hits, it's very unlikely for the boss to actually carry out that hit, right?
I think she says it's unlikely. It's not unheard of.
She said it was unusual, isn't it?
That's what she wrote in her report.
But in this case, you're saying that Mr. Shepard was a mob boss, right?
It's not just me that believes that. That's well known in the law enforcement community, sir.
But that's a yes. You're claiming today that Mr. Shepard is a mob boss.
Yes, sir.
You're claiming that he didn't just order someone to do this hit, right?
No, the evidence I found suggested he carried out the hit himself.
You're claiming that he himself, as the mob boss, went to that house to murder him himself, right?
Yes, that's exactly what we believe happened.
Then I want to talk about the forensic evidence. in this case? Because, Marshal, I'm sure you conducted a very thorough investigation, right?
I like to think so. We coordinated with the FBI and state authorities to do a good job.
You looked at Mr. Capello's house, right?
It was the crime scene, sir, yes.
You looked at his car,
Yes, sir.
canvassed the neighborhood,
We did.
looked at Mr. Shepard's hotel room, looked at
Absolutely.
Mr. Shepard's rental car.
Yes, sir.
Then I want to talk about what you didn't find in all of those places. Because, sir, isn't it true? You didn't find a single fingerprint tying Mr. Shepard back to this crime, right?
No, sir. We did not.
You didn't find a shred of DNA tying Mr. Shepard back to this crime.
No, sir. The eyewitness reported seeing the killer wearing gloves, and we did not find any fingerprint or DNA evidence.
You didn't find any footage tying Mr. Shepard back to this crime, right?
No, sir.
No footage from the hotel.
No, sir.
No footage from the neighborhood.
No, sir.
You also didn't find any track marks from the tire, did you? From the car, excuse me.
I'm sorry, like,
Did you see any skid marks from the car?
on the Capello driveway?
Yeah, yes, sir.
No.
In the street where
No.
the car was.
No skid marks.
You didn't find any dirt or mud that could be traced back to Mr. Shepard?
No.
Sir, you actually never even found a single eyewitness that could identify Mr. Shepard, could you?
No, the eyewitness who did see the crime took place gave a description that matched Mr. Shepard's physical description, but he did not see Mr. Shepard's face.
So I want to talk very specifically about what that eyewitness did and didn't see.
All right.
Now, it's true, he says that he saw the attacker come up from behind, right?
Yes, sir.
And kill Mr. Capello.
Yes, sir.
But like you just said, that witness didn't see his face.
No, he did not.
That witness couldn't even tell you his skin color.
I believe he said he thinks the person was white. He's not completely sure.
He said he couldn't be certain of the person's skin color, right?
No, he thinks the person was white. Can't be certain.
So that's a yes. He can't be certain, right?
That's what I just said. Yes, sir.
He said he couldn't even be certain about his hair color, right?
No.
He said it was dark.
Yes, sir. It was
So,
night.
I want to talk about that car because, Mr. Orr, you said that it was just like the car that Mr. Shepard was driving, right?
Yes, sir. We showed the witness the picture of the car, and he said, that's right. It looks just like that one.
Well, before you showed him the picture, you asked him what did that car look like, right?
We did.
And he didn't say, oh, it was a Ferrari, did he?
No, he said it was a dark sports car, Ferrari, Maserati, maybe a Lamborghini.
So that's a no. He said, he didn't say it was a Ferrari, right?
I think he listed off a couple luxury sports car brands. Ferrari was one of them.
He didn't say that car was dark green, did he?
No, he said a dark sports car.
He couldn't even tell you what the color was.
No, it was the middle of the night.
At first, he told you that that car was black, right?
Yes, sir.
So let's talk about those cables. Because he said you looked into those cables, right?
I did.
You looked into the rental car agency.
Yes, sir.
Sir, can you tell the members of the jury the last person who rented that car?
We don't know their name. The car was rented 2 times after Mr. Capello.
It was actually rented 4 times, wasn't it?
I believe it was 2 times. I might have that wrong.
Well, whether it's 2 or 4, there were different people that were in that car after the Mr. Shepard.
Yes,
right?
sir. I'm pretty confident it was 2 people.
And not just that, you know the trunk of Mr. Capello's car was open that night, right?
That's what the eyewitness observed. Yes.
Sir, did you ask Mr. Capello's wife, does he usually keep this brand of jumper cables in the car?
No, sir.
So we don't know if those jumper cables came from that car, did you? Do you?
No, that's not what we concluded, but it's possible.
So I want to talk about the identification finally, because you said that that witness ended up identifying Mr. Shepard.
I'm sorry, sir?
You said that eyewitness, he eventually ended up identifying Mr. Shepard as the person he saw, right?
We gave a physical description that matched the physical description of the killer he saw. It matched Mr. Shepard's.
Right, then you tried to get him to do an eyewitness identification, true?
No, sir. I did not conduct that interview with the eyewitness.
But isn't it true that some FBI agents showed him photos of suspects, right?
Yes, sir.
They showed him a photo of Mr. Shepard, true?
Yes, sir.
And when you showed him a photo of Mr. Shepard, they asked, do you see anyone you recognize in that photo, right?
That's my understanding from reading the affidavit of the witness, yes.
And sir, when they asked, do you recognize anyone in that photo, that witness didn't say, oh, I think that was the guy that I saw that night, right?
No, that's not what he said.
He actually said, I don't recognize anyone except for Mr. Capello, true?
That's right.
But I wasn't good enough for those detectives, right?
Sir, I wasn't in the interrogation room.
Well, isn't it true, after he said, I don't recognize anyone except for Mr. Capello, that detective said, take a second look, right?
That's my understanding from reading the affidavit.
That detective said, are you sure it's not this person, right?
Yes, sir.
And then the witness said, sure, that could be the person, I guess, right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Marshal. Thank you, Your Honor. I have nothing further.
Redirect?
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Wright, you were asked on cross-examination about whether there was any forensic evidence tying the defendant to this crime. So I want to go through some of that evidence. Did you figure out what the defendant's height was during your investigation?
Yes, sir. The defendant measured in at 5'11".
What was the height that eyewitness reported for the killer they saw?
I believe it was 5'11".
Did you find out how much Mr. Shepard weighed?
Around 180 pounds.
Did you find any forensic evidence about shoe prints with the weight of the person who killed Mr. Capello?
Yes, sir. We measured shoe prints we found near the Capello driveway, and they were the exact depth you would expect from someone that is 180 pounds.
What size shoe did the defendant wear?
Size 11.
What did the forensic evidence show the size of the shoe of the person who killed Mr. Capello was?
Size 11.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Nothing further.
Any recross?
Yes, Your Honor. Just want to ask about those footprints one more time, sir. Can you tell the members of the jury where those footprints were?
I believe they were found near Mr. Capello's house.
They were on the side of the house, right?
Yes, sir. That's where the eyewitness reported seeing the person come from.
The eyewitness reported seeing the person coming from the side of the house.
My understanding it was from the gate.
It's from the gate of the house. That's what that eyewitness said.
Yes, sir.
Sir, you have a copy of that exhibit up there, don't you?
Which one?
The eyewitness identification. I believe it's Exhibit 5.
Sure.
Sir, can you tell me where he says he came from the gate?
My understanding is that he marks some places on a map down here at the end of the exhibit, and he says D shows where the attacker came from, and on a map he marked up it shows D as the gate.
So, nowhere does he say the person came from the gate.
No, he does, sir.
Okay. The time.
No further questions, Your Honor.
May this witness step down?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have a good day, everybody.
Your Honor, we just have one last thing we'd like to do before we rest our case in chief.
Go
I'd
ahead.
like to read a couple of lines from Exhibit 5, that expert report that Mr. Harper entered before.
Go ahead.
We'll be reading lines 39, 41 of page 1, and then 30 and 45 of page 2. Conclusions. Augie Shepard is the acting boss of the DeBruno crime family. Barry Capello's government cooperation is a mob offense punishable by death. The murder of Barry Capello was a mob killer. With that, we rest our case in chief.
Defense witness?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the defense calls Miss Lauren Shepard to the stage.
All right.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Go right ahead.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Can you introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Hi, my name is Lauren Shepard.
What do you do for a living?
Well, I'm a student right now. I'm a senior. I live in Philadelphia, but I'm touring colleges.
Well, Miss Shepard, I want to talk about how we got here today.
Okay.
Do you know why you're testifying today, ma'am?
Yes. This is my dad's trial, and I was with him in LA when Barry Capello was killed.
I want to take a few steps back. Do you know Mr. Capello at all?
I do. He was a friend of my family, kind of like an uncle, but the one you're not related to, if that makes sense.
And had you seen Mr. Capello ever before going to, excuse me, had you seen Mr. Capello in LA that weekend?
No, I never saw him.
So I want to walk through exactly what happened on that trip.
Okay.
When were you supposed to go to LA?
Well, it was kind of on this road trip that my dad was taking me on to look at colleges in California. So we went to Berkeley, we went to UC Santa Barbara, and then on June 25th, 2022, we went to UCLA.
So, ma'am, were you just visiting Los Angeles that weekend?
No, not at all. I mean, we flew into Oakland, and then we were driving down the coast. So we hit a lot of cities on the way. It wasn't just about going to LA.
So let's talk about that day in LA. How did it start?
Well, we got in pretty early. We decided to go to lunch and get ice cream before we took a tour of the campus. Our campus tour was pretty long. We met with admissions. They had sent me a letter, so I wanted to talk to them. You know, demonstrated interest is like huge right now. But we just spent the day touring LA. We went to dinner. Then we went back to our hotel and went to sleep.
Well, I want to walk through every step of that day. Earlier you said you went to lunch. Where exactly did you go?
It was a restaurant I got recommended to me. It was called Pomodoro. I went with my dad. I actually made the reservation.
Where did you go after that?
There was an ice cream place down the street, and I've got kind of a sweet tooth, so we went there. It was called Saffron and Rose.
Ma'am, are you aware of somewhere called Kline Travel Agency?
Yes,
Were you near Kline Travel Agency that day?
we were. It was in between the ice cream shop and the place we ate lunch.
Did you walk in front of that building?
Yes, so we walked directly from our lunch to the ice cream shop, and so we passed the travel place.
Well, when you passed that travel place, did you see your father looking into the window?
Nope, I didn't.
Did you see him make eye contact with someone?
I don't even know if there was anyone in there.
Wait, ma'am, did you see anyone in there?
No, I didn't look.
Did you see Mr. Barry Capello in that office?
No, I definitely didn't.
So let's talk about what happened after that lunch.
Okay.
What did you do later that night?
Well, after lunch, we toured UCLA. Then we went back to our hotel. We had dinner. We were gone at dinner until about 10:30. It was the steakhouse. And then we came back. We were staying at the guest house really close to UCLA's campus.
And what did your father do when you got back to that hotel?
He went to sleep.
What did you do?
I pretended to be asleep for a little bit, and then I went to a party with one of my friends who was a year older than me in high school. She was a freshman at UCLA that year, and she kind of wanted to give me a taste of what the campus was like. So I left him.
Ma'am, I want to be upfront with the jury. Did you ever tell anyone you were going to that party?
Not at the time, no.
So when did you tell someone for the first time?
Well, when I talked to the police for the first time, I didn't tell them I'd left. I just told them I was asleep. I was nervous. I mean, I wasn't supposed to be going out. My dad had no idea I'd left. And it was a party. There was
Objection.
alcohol.
Speculation to the fact that her dad had no idea she left.
Any comment, Mr. Harper?
Yes, Your Honor. This is based on the witness's rationally based perception, if I may proffer.
Go ahead.
She's going to testify that she actually came back and there were no signs that her dad had moved whatsoever. Nothing was moved, no clothes were changed, he had no marks, he didn't look disheveled, didn't look tired. And that's why she's saying he had no idea that she was going. She didn't tell him and she didn't see her, and he didn't see her there.
May I respond?
Yes.
First, everything that opposing counsel just said isn't on the record at that point to support that assertion, so there's a lack of foundation for that as a rationally based perception. But additionally, the way that the statement is phrased to begin with, the fact that the defendant had no idea that she left, that steps into the defendant's mindset. This witness can't testify as to what her father knew, only as to what it seemed or what she observed.
Objection sustained.
Yes, Your Honor. just to be clear, can we only strike the portion, that specific sentence about him knowing that she wasn't there, but keeping the rest of the answer on the record?
Yes.
That's fine with us.
Ma'am, when you arrived back at that hotel, what'd you see?
The same thing I saw when I left. My dad asleep in his bed.
Did he look like he had moved at all?
No, he didn't.
Did he look disheveled?
No, he looked the same as when I last saw him.
Was there anything missing?
Nope.
Was anything moved?
Nope, he was just under his covers asleep.
Were his clothes any different?
Nope, same pajamas.
And I want to be clear about what happened that day. Now, how long were you with your father on June 25th and June 26th of 2021?
All day. I mean, we got there in the morning, like I said, we ate lunch. It was really nice. I mean, I never got to spend that much time with my dad. He was always working.
And throughout that entire day, did your father ever look angry?
No.
Did he ever look upset?
No. No.
Did you see him make any strange calls?
Calls? No.
Did you see him planning something?
Planning? No.
I'll be more specific. Did he ever mention the name Barry Capello at all?
No, we talked about pasta and ice cream and the college.
So what did happen on that weekend, Michelle?
Like I told you, we got into LA, we went to lunch, we had ice cream, we went back to the hotel, we went to dinner, I went to the party. When I came back, he was asleep. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Shepard. Thank you, Your Honor. I have nothing further.
Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Shepard.
Hi.
I want to start by talking about what you claim happened the day that you and the defendant were in LA. Now, you told us just a moment ago that you didn't see your father make any strange calls. Is that right?
I mean, I saw him make calls, but they weren't strange.
Well, let's be clear about one of the calls you saw your father make. You went back to the hotel after that tour you took of UCLA, right?
That's right.
You were there for 3 hours?
That's right, until we went to dinner, like I said, at that steakhouse.
Your father was on the phone for that entire time, those 3 hours, right?
I don't know if it was the entire time, but he was definitely making calls. That's right.
You've previously stated that your father was on the phone, quote, the whole time?
Yes, he was on the phone.
You actually had headphones in during the time that your father was making those calls, right?
I did, yes.
So you didn't hear what the defendant said when he was on that 3-hour phone call?
Well, I don't know if it was just one call, but no, I didn't hear anything he said.
You also spoke to the police about what happened that day, didn't you?
That's right, I did.
And when you spoke to the police about where you were that evening, you lied.
Like I said, yes.
Could you please turn to Exhibit 17 in front of you?
Sure. You'll just have to give me a second, sir.
Of course.
Here it is.
Now, ma'am, this is a receipt from an Uber ride you took the evening that Mr. Capello died, isn't it?
That's correct, yes.
It looks the same as the last time you saw him.
Yes.
We offer Exhibit 17. Both parties have already stipulated this meets an exception to the hearsay rule under 8036.
Per that stipulation, Your Honor, we have no objection.
It'll be admitted.
And ma'am, when you first spoke to the police, you told them that your father was, quote, never out of your sight when you were in LA, right?
Yes, that's right.
That wasn't true.
That's right, like I said earlier.
You left at 11:30 from the hotel, didn't you?
Around 11:30, I think it was a little before.
And this receipt, well, as it shows us that you didn't get back to that hotel room until after 3 a.m., right?
That's right.
So, Ms. Shepard, for those 3.5 hours, you weren't in that hotel room.
No, I was at a party with my friend.
For those 3.5 hours, you weren't at the hotel at all, right?
Right, the party was off campus.
Ms. Shepard, isn't it true that for those 3.5 hours, you didn't see what the defendant was doing?
No, I didn't see him. He wasn't at the party.
Then I want to talk to you now about a man named Barry Capello. You've met him, haven't you?
Yeah, Uncle Barry.
You and your father used to call him Uncle Barry, right?
Yes, like I said.
He was a family friend?
Yeah, he came over for holidays, him and his wife, almost every one. We were really close. I looked up to him.
But that didn't last forever, did it?
No.
In 2018, your father told you that Mr. Capello testified against a member of your family, right?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it, honestly.
It was your cousin?
Yes,
Your cousin went to jail?
yes,
Your cousin's still in jail?
he is.
Your father seemed devastated after your cousin was sent to prison, right?
Of course, yes.
He seemed devastated after Mr. Capello testified about that trial?
He was definitely devastated that my cousin was in prison. He was more angry at Barry. I felt like he lied just to save himself from
We'll
drug
get to
charges.
what your father said in just a second, but right now I want to be clear. When you spoke about that trial, well, your father said that Barry mentioned him, right?
Yes,
He said that the defendant was a mob boss, right?
I think so. I wasn't there.
Well, your father told you that Mr. Capello was accusing him of being a mob boss, right?
Yes,
And like you told us a moment ago, you spoke to the defendant about how he felt after all of this happened, right?
yeah, he talked about it to me.
Ms. Shepard, the defendant didn't say, well, Mr. Capello, he made it all up, did he?
No, that's not what he said.
The defendant didn't say, oh, Mr. Capello, he's a liar, did he?
No,
Ms. Shepard, isn't it true that the defendant called Mr. Capello a rat?
yes, that's what he said.
Thank you, Ms. Shepard. Nothing further.
Is there any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go right ahead.
Ms. Shepard, did your father ever tell you why Mr. Capello was testifying?
Well, yes. He told me that Uncle Barry had been arrested for having drugs. And he cut a deal.
Objection? Hearsay?
Response, Your Honor?
Yes.
Opposing counsel opened the door to this conversation when he asked multiple questions about that specific conversation to this witness on cross. It's only fair that the jury hears the entirety of the conversation.
May I respond?
Let me just clarify for my sake. We're talking about the same conversation that was brought up. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, we actually don't believe that this is necessarily the same conversation. These are all different statements that happened at different points in time. Additionally, the party opponent rule only goes one way. Just because we're allowed to ask about statements from the defendant doesn't mean that the defendant then can go and ask about other statements. That's not how the party opponent rule works.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes, except is there another evidence code section under the Federal Rules of Evidence that would be applicable?
Other than hearsay, Your Honor?
Other than admission of a party opponent as an exception?
Yes, Your Honor, I believe that perhaps Rule 106, the rule of completeness, also applies to this. This was a written or recorded statement, and they're only eliciting specific portions of that statement. And if we believe that a certain statement ought to be considered in fairness with those, we can offer those onto the record pursuant to Rule 106. And that's what we're doing right now. We omitted important parts of that conversation, and it's important that the jury hear the whole context.
May I respond?
Well, first of all, on 106, is this the same? I'm having a problem not understanding that this is one conversation. So, Mr. Harper, I want to ask him first. How is it that 106 applies if we're talking about, it sounded to me like it was a combination of different statements, which obviously is not unusual between a father and daughter, right? So is my understanding inaccurate?
Your Honor, there's two things here. First, it is our contention that this was one conversation that she talked about her father about the trial. That's our contention as based on that interrogation that the FBI conducted of this witness. Secondly, Your Honor, Rule 106, I'm actually arguing that it applies to the deposition itself. That's the written or recorded statement. That, in this specific statement, was included in that report. And because there are only certain portions that ought to be considered with others, under the rule of completeness, we can offer other portions of that deposition that ought to be considered in fairness. So it's actually about the deposition as opposed to the conversation per se.
Last word.
All right, this raises an 805 hearsay within hearsay issue. It's one thing if opposing counsel is talking about statements within the deposition, but this is a statement in the deposition that is a statement in itself. It's a statement from the defendant that's being recounted in that deposition. That's still hearsay. There's no foundation that it came from the same conversation, so the rule of completeness doesn't apply. It's still hearsay.
I'm going to preliminarily sustain the objection if the foundation is laid to what you just argued. I will reconsider my ruling.
Yes, Your Honor, specifically as to the conversation or to Rule 106 as to the deposition, foundation.
106 as to the deposition.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Shepard, did FBI detectives ask you what your father told you about that tribe?
They did, yes.
And did you tell them everything that he told you?
Yes,
Did you tell them what Mr. Orr asked you about on cross-examination?
I did, yes.
And specifically, did you tell them in that same conversation that and did you tell them about specifically the circumstances of that trial, that testimony from Mr. Capello?
Yes. I mean, we weren't even allowed to talk about Uncle Barry after he was gone. My dad didn't even want to hear his name, so there were very limited conversations about what happened.
In that trial, was Mr. Capello testifying against your father?
No.
Thank you, Ms. Shepard. Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Anything further, counsel?
No recross.
You may step down, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, give us just a moment here, please. Jurors need any more time? All right. Mr. Harper, are you resting?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense rests its case in chief.
Okay. Closing arguments, Mr. Orr?
Thank you. Members of the jury, there are some things that everyone in this courtroom can agree on. Everyone agrees. Mr. Capello made this phone call just hours before he died. Everyone agrees. The defendant was driving this dark green Ferrari while he was in Los Angeles. And everyone agrees that these are the cables that were used to kill Mr. Capello. Where we disagree. And what this case is really all about is whether those three things, the call, the car, and the cables, have anything to do with the defendant. And today we've proven they do. Now, as the state, we couldn't just tell you that the defendant was guilty. We had to prove it, beyond a reasonable doubt. Because we charged the defendant with 2 crimes, murder and retaliation against a witness, we had to prove to you that this defendant intentionally killed Mr. Capello. And he did so because of something Mr. Capello said in court. That's exactly what we proved. And we did that by focusing on those same 3 things we told you we would at the beginning of this trial. The call, the car, and the cables. And we started with that call. Because members of the jury, today you got to hear from Mr. Capello himself about what was going on just hours before he was killed. How he saw the defendant, and the defendant saw him. Members of the jury, think about it. If Mr. Capello wasn't actually afraid for his life when he saw the defendant, why would he call someone right away? Call the person who put him in witness protection right away? The reason for that is because the defendant is the person who made this person need to be in witness protection in the first place. Mr. Capello needed protection from the defendant. And I want to go back to a moment in this trial that might have been easy to miss. It was on the cross-examination of Lauren Shepard, the defense's witness. Well, we asked Ms. Shepard about what the defendant was saying about Mr. Capello after that trial. Ms. Shepard? Well, she told you that the defendant called Mr. Capello a rat. Think about that. If someone isn't telling the truth, if you disagree with what they have to say, you say that they made it all up, you call them a liar, you dismiss them. You only call somebody a rat when they've exposed what you were doing all along. And that rat was dead to the defendant. Which brings us to that second thing, the car. Because today you saw evidence that the defendant was driving this dark green Ferrari while he was in Los Angeles. The same kind of car that that eyewitness saw parked outside of Mr. Capello's house just moments before he was killed. The same exact car that that eyewitness saw the defendant get in and then drive away. Members of the jury, the defense wants you to believe that this case is all about a faulty investigation, that we just were blinded by our need to look at this particular suspect. And of course, the defense didn't have a burden in this case. They didn't have to call any witnesses, present any exhibits, give you any evidence. But when they choose to do so, you're allowed to ask whether what they told you makes sense. And it doesn't. Because no matter how many times Mr. Harper wants to claim that we didn't present any forensic evidence, remember what Detective Wright told you. The shoe prints of the person at the scene, size 11. The weight of the person who killed Mr. Capello, 180 pounds. Their height, 5'11". Members of the jury, all of them, matches one person. The defendant, Augie Shepard. And so then the defense presents you this alibi. Well, the defendant was sleeping when his daughter left, and well, he was still sleeping when he got back. So that means he can't have possibly gone away in those 3.5 hours that his daughter was gone. Drive 20 minutes away, kill Mr. Capello, and come back to make it look like he was there the whole time. Members of the jury, the story the defense is asking you to believe isn't reasonable doubt. It's doubting reason. Which brings us to that third and final thing, the cable. And on this one, let's just go straight to the evidence. Because Mr. Wright told you that these cables were found right next to the victim's body. But you don't just need to take Detective Wright's word for it. Because you also saw other evidence. You saw testimony from that eyewitness saying that jumper cables were used to kill Mr. Capello. You saw that statement, the autopsy, saying that jumper cables were used to kill Mr. Capello, and you heard testimony about the rental company. The car that the defendant brought, it was missing jumper cables. The same brand of jumper cables that were used to kill Mr. Capello. At the end of the day, that's what makes this case so unfortunate. Because no one is asking you to believe that Mr. Capello was perfect. He wasn't. But he didn't deserve to be strangled to death as his neighbor watched. Today we prove to you that this defendant killed Mr. Capello. We showed you the call, showed you the car, and we showed you the cables. Now you have the evidence. That's why we ask that you find this defendant guilty of retaliation against a witness and murder. Thank you.
Defense?
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court. Mr. Orr, members of the jury, people see what they expect to see. And if there was one moment in this trial that encapsulated that fact, it was on the cross-examination of that marshal. See, I asked him, wasn't that trunk open? Couldn't there have been lighter cables in Mr. Capello's car? He said, it's possible, but it's not what we concluded. I asked him, sir, isn't this pretty unlikely to be a mob killing based on what your expert says? He says yes. Mr. Orr gets up here and still reads that report where she says, this is a mob killing. I guess it was unlikely, but they still concluded it. Time and time and time again, these prosecutors see evidence that contradicts their story, but they say, that's possible. But it's not what we concluded. Why? Because they saw exactly what they wanted to see the moment they saw Mr. Capello's dead body on the ground. And that's not good enough, members of the jury. Because throughout this entire trial, these prosecutors have carried a burden that's never left this table. A burden to prove their case. Because here's the thing, members of the jury. When Mr. Shepard walked through that door and sat at our table, he was presumed to be innocent. And that doesn't change until these prosecutors do their job. And they did it, members of the jury. Because if there's anything the evidence that was presented to you today showed you, it's that people see what they expect to see. And these prosecutors, that federal marshal, they all did just that. How do we know that? Well, I actually want to talk about those three things Mr. Orr has been talking about on this entire trial. The call, the car, and the cables. Let's walk through them one by one. Let's start with that call. Because sure, Mr. Capello called that marshal. But there's a lot missing in that statement. You heard the testimony of Ms. Shepard. She said, I didn't even know that store was there until the FBI asked me about it. We didn't look at it. Certainly didn't see my dad looking at it. I didn't even see anyone inside the window. So I have to ask, if she didn't see him in the window, how could her father have? But not just that, members of the jury, how do they even know that Mr. Shepard was able to track down Mr. Capello from seeing him for 5 seconds in his store? Did he look up his number in the white pages? Did he Google him? Did he track him down? Frankly, members of the jury, we don't know. They just want you to assume that because he saw him, he magically knew where he lived. They have to show you how he found that out, and they did. So the car. At the beginning of this trial, Mr. Orr told you that an eyewitness saw a green car at the scene, and frankly, members of the jury, that is not what you heard today. That marshal got on that stand and told you that eyewitness, when they asked him to describe that car, he didn't know the make. He didn't know the model. He said it might have been a luxury sports car. He called it black before they showed him a picture and said, are you sure it's not this one? Then he goes, oh, it does look kind of like what I saw. So, let's go to the cables. And if there was one moment that I can say to prove this entire point, again, it's on the cross-examination of that marshal. Because I asked him, sir, do you even know who had that car last? He said, no. I don't know who it was, but I do know that 2 to 4 people had rented that car. So do you know if there were jumper cables in Mr. Capello's car? No, I didn't know. Did you ask Ms. Capello if there were jumper cables? No, I didn't. Time after time after time, these prosecutors see the explanation that they want, and they refuse to keep collecting evidence. That brings me back to the facts I asked you to pay attention to at the beginning of this trial. Let's go through them again. First, there's no forensic evidence, members of the jury. What would you expect to see in a trial like this? And maybe you would expect to see DNA, fingerprints, something tying him to the crime, but they want you to believe that footprints from a man that's 5'11" and 180 pounds, that's enough to prove that that was Mr. Shepard. Frankly, members of the jury, I'm 5'11", don't weigh 180 pounds, but I'm sure it would look like I was 5'11" on that street that night. They want you to believe that because someone was 5'11", there's one person that matches? How many people in this courtroom are 5'11"? Members of the jury, that's not enough to prove that that person is Mr. Shepard. Second, there's no reliable eyewitnesses in this case. And I don't have to belabor the same point over and over, members of the jury. You heard what that eyewitness said, and you're going to have it when you go back in that deliberation. Because he admits himself. It was dark. He couldn't see the person's skin color, couldn't see their face, couldn't tell you where they came from. Members of the jury, at a certain point, what did he even see? We don't know. And frankly, he probably didn't know either until these prosecutors gave him a picture of Mr. Shepard and said, "Are you sure that's not the person it was?" Oh, and then he says, "Well, that's probably the person, I guess." But no one else happened to see him. So fine. Third simple fact. This wasn't a mob hit. Members of the jury, their own FBI expert said the circumstances of this killing were atypical for a mob hit. They want you to believe that a mob boss, the leader of one of the largest crime organizations in the company, doesn't order a hit, doesn't fly someone out, doesn't ask someone to do it for him. No, he goes to himself, to that car, murders him on his daughter's college visit. So what's the story that makes more sense? The story that Miss Shepard told you. This was a father-daughter trip. They were excited to spend time together. They were excited to see LA. They weren't there to kill anyone. She doesn't even remember her father mentioning Mr. Capello's name. There's only one reason why. People see what they expect to see. That's why we ask you to find Mr. Shepard not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Mr. Orr, the rebuttal argument?
I think I've got time for a quick rebuttal.
Go right ahead.
People see what they expect to see. Members of the jury, you don't expect to see a call, a car, and cables connected to one person. It's the defendant. Find him guilty. Thank you.
Okay, give us a minute, please. Thank you.